Hey, soccer fans, and welcome to another episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. Even though there's no soccer, we're still talking about it. No live games, but plenty of content here at SOP Soccer. We're going to start talking about an article that was published by Gabe Marcotti at ESPN FC about the financial impact of the COVID-19 suspensions around the world. Also, we're going to get into a few of our own memories. You know, everyone's playing old classic games. Well, we're going to regale you with stories of MLS past, at least from Mike and Mai's perspective. After the break, we're going to look at a couple other headlines from around the world, specifically how the COVID-19 suspensions and pandemic is going to affect Olympic qualifying. And you know what? There was a little bit of soccer last week being played down under. Mike actually watched an Australian A-League game, and he's going to break it down and see how they compare to the United States, to the MLS, and kind of give us some comparisons. So stay tuned for all of this and more on tonight's episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. Hey, soccer fans, welcome back once again to the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. It's been a slow week for soccer, to say the least, but we have come up with some headlines and some content that we hope you'll enjoy, and we hope to have a good discussion about how the coronavirus, COVID-19, is kind of impacting American soccer as well as worldwide soccer tonight. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about an ESPN FC article that came out touching a little bit on the financial aspects of it, and we'll get into more discussion in greater detail. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Nick Pateris. We appreciate you listening. Joined electronically, obviously, in the day of social distancing. Got to keep our space and Skype everything. My good friend and fellow host, Mike Guglielmi. Mike, how are you tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. I am hanging out here. Been in quarantine for a while now. Can't leave my house. So yeah, I'm doing okay.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I fortunately or unfortunately, I work in the banking industry, so I'm part of the exception to the shelter-in-place order put out by Governor Pritzker here in Illinois. So I get to go to the office every day and work on mortgages and foreclosures and loss mitigation and all that great stuff. So I got to tell you though, my commute has been much better lately. Pretty
I
much cut
bet.
in half. I'm going about 85 down the highway at all times to get to and from the office. It's pretty nice. There's nobody on the road.
Nice.
That being said, soccer fans, we appreciate you tuning in and listening. If you want to join the conversation, follow us along and subscribe on our social media pages on Twitter at SOP Soccer, on YouTube at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, same as on Facebook. And you can buy our swag, support our show, and check us out on Redbubble. That's the color red and a bubble like you pop it. Redbubble, check out SOP Swag. They got everything on there. They'll put a logo on whatever you want to, within reason, I'm sure, from shower curtains and coffee mugs to T-shirts and hats. So go check us out on Redbubble. Additionally, as we're expanding our YouTube content, especially with all the great videos Mike's been putting out lately, and when the weather gets video, hopefully I can go out and embarrass myself trying some soccer drills and tricks and things like that. And maybe that's something you listeners and viewers can send in. Nick, try this out. See if you can hurt yourself doing a trick like this. We'll put some more videos out there. And along those lines, if your business or if you personally are interested in sponsoring us and getting your logo and your ad or your name out on our YouTube channel, reach out to us either via direct message on Twitter or by email, podcast@sonsofapitchsoccer.com. Mike, any business that you got to take care of before we get into the heart of tonight's episode?
No, let's talk about the little bit of soccer that we actually have to talk about because there's not much. So let's talk about it.
Absolutely. So to begin with, there was this ESPN FC article by Gabe Marcotti that I was reading today. Again, talking about the financial impact of leagues around the world suspending their seasons. And it's very European centric, but I think there's a lot of comparisons we can make to the MLS. He said that the big five leagues around Europe, again, England, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, are losing around like 4 to 5 billion euros in revenue due to this suspension, with the Premier League being the most hit with between 1 and 1.5 billion euros lost in revenue. It sounds like a big number, but as his article points out, it's really only about 20-25% of individual clubs' revenues or their budget makeup. The vast majority, of course, around 80% or so, going towards player salaries. So you should still be able to make your payroll, is I think the point of the article, but you're just not going to have that money to go out and start spending in the next transfer window or upgrading your facilities or doing whatever else you need to improve your club, your franchise, and everything like that. So that was the first major point that he brought up. And the next point is, hey, you got these lower leagues whose main source of revenue aren't these major Premier League Serie A TV deals. It's their ticket sales. It's their people through the gate. It's their concessions. It's their in-stadium purchases, their stores, things like that. So by shutting down the games, they're losing their main and biggest source of revenue because no one's coming to the stadiums. So one of Gabe's proposed fixes was have every club in the Premier League pay like a 1% tax to subsidize the clubs in the English first and second in the championship and first and second, like that, something along those lines. So those are kind of the two things that he put out. Now, Mike, first of all, have you heard of any USL clubs struggling to the point where they're going to need a bailout, so to say, or some sort of subsidy from Major League Soccer or the U.S. Soccer Federation?
No, I haven't. But there's really no news cycle at all regarding sports right now. So I'm sure if if it got to that point, maybe we would hear something if there's no games going on and all that kind of stuff. But no, I haven't heard anything about the USL, being in any type of issues like that. Then again, the USL doesn't pay their guys the same way that some of these lower divisions in England and Italy and whatnot pay their people. So knowing even what with Joe Falla, and hearing about his journey so far and knowing what his salary is, they don't have much to worry about from paying out their player salaries. So it's a different it's a different world over here in that regard. But again, and that's the thing too. Like these teams like Red Bulls 2 and Toronto FC 2, who haven't even started their season yet, but a lot of these MLS number 2 sides, they don't make any money. They're not revenue generating organizations. I mean, maybe a couple of them, obviously your standalones like Las Vegas Lights, the I don't even know what some of the other USL teams that are standalone, but
Sure.
those teams, it's a different story than the MLS sides because they're there as a farm team. They're technically subsidized by the bigger company as it is, like MLSE pays for, Toronto FC2 and all that, and they own TFC, the Maple Leafs, Raptors, all that stuff. So it's a totally different business over in Europe than it is here. So I don't think there's much to worry about right now because I think more people are concerned about where their next meal is going to come from and, trying to, make sure they can pay their rent and things like that. People don't really care about the financial struggles of a soccer team at the moment. So, that's here nor there for people right now. So, but it should be interesting to see what happens. So I think it's going to affect some teams, but hopefully not too many.
Yeah, and we all know that in the United States, the biggest source of revenue are the TV deals, and the USL is finally starting to break into, at least via ESPN Plus, a little bit more of a mainstream television audience. I don't know if YouTube TV is running any stuff. I know they're the LAFC sponsor, and they're airing all the LAFC games and a lot of other MLS games. So I don't know if they're picking up any USL games as well, or if Twitter is broadcasting any of these USL games, either the USL Championship or First and Second Division. So without having televised games, I mean, I haven't heard of any major sponsors like pulling money back from clubs or pulling money out of TV advertisements because their commercials are still running, maybe just not in the middle of a live sporting event. They're being run during replays and they're being run at other points and during other programming that the stations are putting on. So I haven't heard anything, but you're right. It has been kind of a slow news cycle. I mean, there's also a lot going on in American politics that everyone is consuming right now. So maybe the sports side of thing isn't being as reported, or if it's even there at all. So I think you're right. Until we start seeing sponsors give less money, it's not going to be a huge impact. I think the USL sides have a double-edged sword of not having soccer-specific stadiums. So they don't have to pay, these clubs and franchises don't have to pay their own employees or worry about full-time maintenance. I think of the the Indy 11 club who I went down to see last season. They play at Lucas Oil Stadium. That's the Colts' home field. So they're probably just paying rent. They don't have to worry about paying contractors or game day employers or maintenance or crew or anything like that. They're just paying their rent. And if their season is over and suspended, then okay, maybe you eat the rent, or maybe they had an out clause, like any good contract, that this was an act of God, and there's no way that they could have been prepared for it, or they took no action to cause it. It's like your house getting struck by lightning, and then your sale contract doesn't go through. So maybe that is a bonus for the USL, the fact that they don't have to have their own stadiums and infrastructure or anything like that, other than just kind of their full-time employees. But we have heard a lot of sports owners, franchise and team owners, saying they're going to keep paying their people as best as they can. To me, that signals that there could be some financial issues this fall or next season, whenever the next year starts up. It's going to kind of drag it out. Maybe you're not going to see big signings over the next couple of years. Maybe you're not going to see clubs be able to advance within the USL levels or get an expansion bid in the MLS due to finances. Are you worried about any long-term financial aspects, Mike?
Not at all. Not right now. Where we stand right now. I mean, if this continues on for 3 to 6 months, maybe. If things are back to normal, and it's going to take a while for things to get back to normal. But if things are to, say they resume play with fans in the stands by July, I don't think you're going to see much of an issue. I don't think it's sports is sports, man. People are always going to pay to go see it. Maybe a little bit less than what it was. You might see a little bit of a decline, a small amount, but nothing crazy. They're not going to stop making signings. These big European clubs are still going to make big signings. MLS teams are going to make signings. Unless this thing. I mean, if this goes on and becomes this huge thing where 80% of the population comes down with it, and we're in these stay-at-home orders for a year, then it could really screw things up. That's not going to happen. They're trying to flatten the curve now. That's why it's gotten as crazy as it has. And so, I'm trying to think of what the right word is for it. But, the reason why it is as harsh as it is now with the stay at home, and don't go out, where everybody works from home, all that kind of stuff, they're trying to flatten it. It's not a huge issue. Your death rate is not that high. This is not something where, this is not like Ebola, where it was, if you got it, you were dead. Like you were puking and shitting for, 3 days and then you died. That's not what this is.
You're painting a great picture for our listeners there, Mike. That's,
you're
a word artiste.
There's a big difference between Ebola and this. At least from the things that I've heard, the doctors and whatnot. Ebola was like you literally had to come in contact with bodily fluid of somebody who was infected. With this, literally, like somebody could sneeze 3 hours ago and you could walk through it and you can get it. So it's totally different. So more people are going to get it, but it's not as serious. So I don't think this is going to last that much longer. I think you're probably looking at maybe a month to 2 months, and then things will start to calm down a little bit, and everything will get back to normal. It's what we do in America. People get back to normal. We're Americans. We're strong. We're tough. We'll get through this.
There you go. And everyone loves a comeback, and nothing more like a total societal comeback, I guess. Along in Gabe's article, he also gave us some information from Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, who said now is the time for bold ideas. So when you're ceasing play all across the world, when you have time to really step back and look at what you have in front of you, your infrastructure of everything, how you schedule games, how you schedule seasons, what sort of tournaments and leagues you have going on. Now's the time where you can really make a meaningful change. And one of the things that Infantino suggested, at least it was suggested in Gabe's article, is that there should be fewer competitions, which would result in more meaningful games, and hopefully, in my mind, better quality games. Because right now you've got your league play. Most leagues have one, if not two, domestic cups. I mean, look at the Premier League. You've got your FA Cup, your Carabao Cup, your regular season. Your top teams are then going into the Champions League, your Europa League. Then you've got also World Cup qualifying, Olympic. There's a lot going on. You've got friendlies, the International Champions Cup. If you want to talk CONCACAF Champions League, Nations League. You've got a couple one-off games between some MLS and Liga MX teams. Maybe eventually some of these clubs will go far in the Club World Cup. You've got, if you're in the Caribbean, tons of qualifying games just to get into Champions League,
right?
Plus Olympic qualifying, plus World Cup qualifying, and then the new CONCACAF Nations League. There's tons of soccer. Tons of soccer going on right now is the point that I've been rambling on to make here. If you can reduce that a little bit and maybe have a little better quality of play and some more meaningful competitions, maybe you get rid of all non-Champions League tournaments, maybe you'll end up all the better for it. Now, Mike, you and I have always said, like, hey, more soccer is more fun, at least from a viewer standpoint. What do you think about this idea of maybe eliminating non-Champions League stuff?
I like it from a standpoint that, the soccer will be better. You're not going to have a lot of issues with teams not being able to, like these guys being worn down and, all these injuries and things. I think that's a big problem with MLS is all the bullshit that these guys go through throughout the season. And it's different because of the salary cap in MLS than it is with, over in Europe. Like they can have a second team play in the whatever cup it is because they've got that many people. When you've got a team that's got a salary cap that can only have, that's 16 deep, 17 deep, the numbers, 17 and 18 spots to these kids who just came up, having them play so much definitely will hinder the quality of the play on the field. So it could be a bonus. But again, from a fan standpoint, it depends what kind of fan you are too, right? Like I'm the type of fan where I just want to watch soccer all the damn time, which we'll talk a little bit about a tweet we got from one of our listeners talking about some ideas for that. And, that's kind of the way I am. Like, just give me more soccer. Like, I just want to watch it. I'm a consumer. I want to watch it. I don't really care that much what the quality is like on the field. If it's bad or like kind of bad, that doesn't really matter to me. I just want to watch some soccer, and that also was kind of the experience with the A-League games. But no, overall, I think you're going to see a good. I think it could be good if they work things out because it's gotten a little out of hand with all the different competitions. I mean, this is just it's nuts. You've got 6, 7, 8 different competitions a season. What the hell ever happened to just league play and like a cup? Like that was that kind of. I don't know what it was like back in the day because I only really started following soccer in like the early 2000s. But I mean, I can probably back in maybe like the 80s. Like you had the league, you had the Champions League, and you had like the domestic cup, and that was it. Now you got 4 different domestic cups. You got a domestic cup that's not really domestic anymore because you're adding your nearest country's rival, and then there's another cup over here. Like it's just too much. So maybe, just maybe, this will be a good thing. They've got to be taking a look at it and running these numbers because they've got time to. So you got to remember these companies have a lot of people working for them, and they can be like, hey, we're not going to fire you, but you need to friggin' work. So here, figure this out, run some numbers on this, do that. So we'll see.
Absolutely. So kind of leading into, like you said, one of the tweets, an idea that we had. I don't know, Mike, you want to talk about John's tweet? I think this is something that you got a kick of when you first read it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So got, John sent us a tweet at SOP Soccer. I think that they should have games without fans. Test everyone before every game and put everything on TV. Now, the way I read that is obviously I'm all for the part of having the games without fans because, yes, it does make a difference. A game behind closed doors is totally different than a game with fans. Yeah. But for the soccer nut that I am, at least I get to watch something. and I'm not stuck here being told what Netflix shows to watch by all my employees who have held me hostage in a group chat, and all they talk about is their TV shows. And I'm like, yeah, tried that one. It sucked. Oh, this one's going to be really good. You should watch Ozark on Netflix. I don't know if anybody else out there has watched Ozark on Netflix, but this will tell you how much of a TV show kind of guy I am. I made it through 10 minutes and 18 seconds before I finally had to shut it off because I couldn't take it anymore.
Well, it doesn't get good until the 11th minute, Mike. Everyone knows that.
You know what? I didn't know that. So, I'm all for it there. Now, as far as him saying test everyone before every game and put everything on TV, is this kind of like some XFL kind of craziness? Like, we let's like watch them get tested or something, like stick the swab up these guys' noses and have like, I mean, it's not even immediate testing, right? I mean, you've got like 3 days, 4 days before they even tell you if you've got it. So unless there's some type of like a media test out there, which I'm sure there will be soon, if there isn't already, then that might be kind of fun to watch too. Hey, let's see who has coronavirus today. Like,
that's how I read his quote, read his tweet, and I think that's the only way to go. Like, get your team, put them all in a house, kind of like a Big Brother scenario type thing. Let everyone get tested, and then you just have like a doctor come out and be like, 2 of you have tested positive, but we mislabeled the samples. So while we sort that out, we're just going to let you guys hang out and try and figure it out and just like see what happens. And then like, okay, send them out onto the pitch. Pull those 2 guys out, send the rest of them out onto the pitch, and just let it happen. Yeah, totally. Televise the testing, televise the post-testing quarantine, and then whoever's healthy, just get them back out onto the pitch and play a game behind closed doors. Yeah, I think there's a lot of appeal there, Mike. I think you get to really see some of your favorite players, see a side of them you've never seen before. But yeah, thanks to John Don 108-78619. Appreciate the tweet. I think earlier John had tweeted at us too, like, well, guys, I think I'll just watch my piano play itself or something along those lines too, as he was trying to pass the time. But there's definitely reality show possibilities here. Some quarantine soccer shows.
Yeah, totally.
And we just got to be the smart ones to come up with it, I think. So, hey, MLS, reach out to us. Brainstorm. Yeah. We'll be there for you. We'll be your think tank.
Yeah.
Mike, any other ideas or anything else you think that should be out there? Or any other tweets from John that you saw?
I didn't see any other tweets from John, but I think as far as some crazy ideas is try and figure something out with, like, I haven't heard anything about the training moratoriums. But make these trainings if they do. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe they lifted. I know they said through Monday, and I haven't heard anything else saying that it was going to be extended. But put it live stream the practices, like play some scrimmages. Like, these guys are trying to stay up. I mean, there's opportunity here other than replaying old games on your YouTube channel. Because, quite frankly, that doesn't do it for me. I don't care. I can't watch a sports game on replay if I already know the score or what happened.
The same way.
And that's why I get so mad at people. Like, if I'm recording a game and, one of my friends is like, dude, did you see that, TFC won tonight 3-1? It doesn't matter if it was MLS Cup. I can't watch that game again if I know the result. So, get rid of the old games. I mean, it's fine if some people like it. That's great. I'm not one of them. Give me some good action, right? Give me some training action. Do something other than this stay-at-home challenge with Frank DeBoer in his tight pants kicking a roll of toilet paper around.
Oh, gosh.
That's and I'll leave it right there.
Yeah, I do appreciate the irony that everyone is using toilet paper for the challenge. I think that's hilarious. But we talk about putting on TV or on some team or league channel kind of the individual trainings. I mean, the players are doing that themselves. They're keeping up on social media, keeping their fans engaged. At least you can see a lot of people doing training sessions, or like we mentioned last week, San Jose's Tommy Thompson did his little skills challenge, and people were sending videos of drills and things that they're trying to perfect and do or copy some of his moves as well. So we're getting a glimpse into it, but you're right. It's not anything league sanctioned or team sanctioned. It's not generating any revenue or marketing possibilities or buzz for the teams. It's just kind of, you're scrolling along late at night before you go to bed and watching these silly videos, and then that's all you think about it. So maybe the league's missing out on something with that. But one of the other funny things on social media that I just want to kind of mention and get a quick take from you, Mike, before we head into the break. Inter Miami FC updated their logo to embrace social distancing.
I totally thought this was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, when I mentioned it to Mike in our prep session, he says, "Wait, the Onion article? Or are we serious here?" We're serious. Their logo has two white herons, and their legs are intercrossed, kind of symbolizing unity and bringing the fans and the team and everything together. But they actually separated the herons on a logo and said, "Hey, let's practice social distancing." Socially conscious move, Mike. Someone in the marketing department that's just trying to justify their paycheck over the next few weeks. Like, what do you think about this?
Hey, we're talking about it, aren't we? That's the point, right?
Well, it is a slow news day.
But exactly, right? I mean, anything to get you into the news and for people to care about it, you do it, especially right now with how bad things are. So, I think it's a brilliant idea from their marketing department. People are talking about it. I truly thought it was a joke. That is how, I mean, I really was like, nah, you're just kidding, right? Like, that's not really what they did. Like, they didn't change their logo, but they actually truly like put out a press release about this, or what?
I think they just posted it on their Twitter page. Gosh, what time is it here? Almost 9:00 Central Time. So this was probably like about 10 hours ago. They posted it this morning, around noon Eastern, maybe. I can't do math in time zones. But yes, some people, at least on Twitter, are praising it, and other people are saying, wow, this is pretty dumb. So whatever the case may be, at least Miami's trying to have a little fun and be a little creative and socially conscious with it at the same time. Maybe, you know what? Maybe people in Chicago could take a cue and redesign a logo.
Hey, maybe. That was a good one. I like it.
Yeah, thanks. We can't go a week without ripping on the Fire logo. So with that being said, we're going to take a couple seconds here to listen to our sponsors who allow us to do what we do here. And remember, if you or your company wants to sponsor us, either get a plug-in on our podcast, which we put out weekly, which we're getting, thousands of views. We're continuing our climb as we're consistently putting out content. Or if you want to sponsor a YouTube channel, Mike's got his picks and predictions every week, currently suspended, as well as other live videos and broadcasts that he does during games. And we're going to, again, try and do some challenges and drills and trainings and just kind of other goofy things once the weather gets nicer and we can get outside here in the Chicago suburbs. So stay tuned. We'll be right back in the second half after a quick sponsor break. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second half of tonight's episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American Soccer podcast. Again, we want to thank our sponsors, Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water. You guys have been with us from the start. You've helped us get to where we're at. I finally got my new microphone hooked up and ready to go, so hopefully the sound quality is improving. So we take our sponsorship money, we reinvest it in our show. That's what we want to do. So again, if there's anyone else out there who's looking for YouTube or podcast sponsorships for us, please reach out to us, podcast at sonsofapitchsoccer.com, or direct message us on Twitter at SOPsoccer. Thanks again to our sponsors. So now let's get back into a few new headlines. Something that was just recently announced that is going to have effects throughout the whole world of international soccer. The Canadian Soccer Federation has declined participating in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Obviously, this is related to the coronavirus and public health concerns, as well as the safety and well-being of their players, staff, and everyone else who would travel for the qualifying matches and for the Olympics. There have been other countries who've considered this and urged the Olympics to either be postponed, to be canceled, to shorten qualifying, to do all sorts of things in order to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Mike, real quickly, man, what's your take on Canadian soccer's decision to not participate, and what kind of do you think it means for Canadian soccer then that they don't get all these extra games?
All right, so there's a couple sides of the coin I'll take here. One, the funny side. They weren't going to qualify anyway, so it's kind of an easy way out for them. Um, second thing is, look, it's not a very, what's going to happen. They're going to get postponed. All of these announcements came out from Canada, and Australia was the other country who said they're not going to participate in the Olympic soccer tournament if they were to qualify. This all came out after sources had been saying to different AP, New York Times, all these other media outlets that the inside talkings are the games are getting postponed anyway. Euro 2020 got postponed. Some other big tournaments in the summer, Copa America, I believe it was, in South America, got postponed. 2021 is going to be the 2020. That's all. They're just moving them to the next year because we don't know. There's too much uncertainty right now. And so, of course, that's what's going to happen. They're going to move it. There's inside sources saying that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So why not come out and say, well, we're not going to be there. Be bold. It's like I told my bosses at work when, we were talking about working remotely. I'm like, this is your chance. This is your chance to be a leader. You know it's going to happen. In a week, 2 weeks, it's going to happen. Why not jump out now in front of the curve and say, I demand all my employees work remotely. Now you look like a rock star. Unfortunately, my bosses did not heed that advice. But look at Canada and Australia. They're like, nope, we're not going. And guess what? It's going to get postponed anyway. So I'm fine with the decision. It doesn't make a difference. They're not playing the qualifying tournament. They're not going to play in the tournament until 2021, and they'll play then. So well done for Canadian Soccer Association for making the news, because they don't make it very often. So, I've got no issues for it. Now, as far as, the U.S. soccer side of things, it's a little bit different of a take because this is a team who should be qualifying, even though they haven't qualified in a while. We've talked about that in some of our past episodes. What does it mean? What's your take on that, Nick? What's it mean for U.S. soccer?
So just to clarify, when we were saying Canada won't be going to the Olympics, it's their entire Olympic squad. Like, right. They're not sending any athletes, and it's not just soccer. And what kind of sucks for Canada is their women's soccer team is very good, and their women's team did qualify with the United States to come out of CONCACAF. Right. So they're missing out on a chance to win some hardware, to bring some more prestige to Canadian women's soccer, and further develop that. My kind of take on it, Mike, is, I'm sad that we're probably not going to have an Olympic Games. As a kid, it was just one of the coolest things for me. Like, you have those dreams of playing in the Olympics, and to have that now taken away from a lot of athletes, so much has to line up to play in the Olympic Games. Like, the year you're born, the month you're born affects your odds of getting onto an Olympic squad, depending on where you're born during the cycle. Additionally, you train your whole lives for this. I mean, imagine if you're a track star. That extra year might be just enough to slow you down where the next guy behind you beats you out in qualifying, or you drop from a medal to outside of the top three when it comes down to the race. Like, you are such a fine-tuned athletic machine that to have it pushed back a year, it's going to ruin people's dreams, and could ruin some livelihoods. We know most Olympic athletes make money off their sponsorships, not so much any specific money from their sport or winnings in their sport. So it's going to mess with a lot of athletes. So that is something I feel for these athletes for. How I feel it affects American soccer, where you're out of a bunch of developmental games for our young athletes. The United States has gone to that U23 type roster that most major soccer nations use during the Olympics. So we're missing out on a large chunk of team development, of international experience, hostile stadium development, and atmosphere, getting used to the atmosphere of these away games that our young players desperately need. Because, like, we can't have young players like show up in the Azteca or show up in some dumpy stadium in Honduras with 5,000 to 10,000 hostile fans down there, at least, if not more, for some of their first experiences. They need these Olympic qualifiers to get used to that. They need the Olympic Games to get used to the international travel and these international tournament formats. So it's going to set back the development of young U.S. players a little bit, if not a lot of it. it's hard to argue with health and safety concerns though, Mike.
Right.
And I'm not going to be the guy here that's got his head in the sand and says, "Oh, it's fine. Everyone's going to get it anyway. These healthy athletes aren't going to be affected." I mean, there's a lot more at stake than that. I'm not going to be that guy who's got his head in the sand, or is going to be the everything's fine. The dog in the room that's on fire.
I'll be that guy. I'll be.
You want to be that guy?
It's fine, Nick. I'll be that guy.
Okay. So since we've got all angles covered here on the Sons of a Pitch Soccer podcast, it sucks because we're not going to have sports. We're not going to have the Olympics, which is the epitome of sports in this world. Personally, as a Greek person, I always took a little bit of pride of watching the Olympic Games. So it's a little bit of my cultural heritage here that's being postponed as well. Call me shallow or call me prideful, whatever the case is. It's definitely impacting me as a Greek or as a Hellenic American, as I have to put on my census form, I think now. But that's kind of my long and short take on everything there, Mike. Do you agree with me to any extent? If you're going to be the stubborn guy, who, give me the other opinion.
I'll be the stubborn guy. Get over it, people. Like this is a cold. It truly is a cold. I don't know what. I mean, look, I get that it's affecting certain genetics differently. I get that it's something that's it's a little bit more than a cold, but it's not as bad as the flu. And that's what's so crazy about this whole thing. So I will be that guy. I will go out on a limb. As far as I know, I think I probably had it. That was actually, I truly believe when I was back in the hospital and you did that MLS Super Draft episode all by yourself, I was in the hospital for pneumonia and I was negative for flu. I was negative for strep. What else could it be? Right. I was a pretty healthy guy, but the problem was I had just started some crazy ass diet and I was giving myself 400 calories a day, and on these certain drops doctor prescribed and all this. So I had this crazy ass, diet going on.
Your body had a reaction to the diet.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there was something else to it. But again, there's something that is, and this is something we're going to get a little bit into COVID-19 right now. So there is the Italians. The Italians are being hit really hard right now. There's two things that are causing it to be hit really hard right now. One is it is socialized medicine. So take it what you will from that. The medical system in Italy is not very good. Number two, you look at this family in New Jersey of Italians. 7 of them contracted the virus at a family gathering, a family reunion. 4 of them have died. 3 of them are in serious and critical condition in the hospital. So it might take another couple. I think there might be something to the genetics of an Italian that could be, something affects it more with this disease. And however it's, and also, I mean, as my wife just spits down from the upstairs is, Italy has the oldest population in Europe. So there's a lot more old people in Italy that are being affected by this. So, I mean, there's different factors here. Personally, I think it's more than it's just a cold. So we're taking this a little too seriously. The fact that we're shutting down our economy, going through all these different things, over a cold. I get the side of it of if somebody who's old, who has a weakened immune system, gets infected by this, it could be worse. But that's the same way with the flu. If your 88-year-old grandma who has diabetes gets the flu, it's not just an easy trip to convenient care. She's going to the hospital and she's got to fight it. So personally, I think it's a bit cracked up a bit too much. So I'll be the stubborn guy here, Nick. I get that there's there's lives at stake and all that, but it's being over politicized and over publicized way too much. I really truly would hate to see what would happen if it was, say, Ebola, where people are, as I alluded to earlier in the show, having a lot of defecation. So we'll leave it at that. But
okay, well, I appreciate you putting on your stubborn American hat right there as you sip is that Scotch bourbon? What do you?
Actually, some Courvoisier.
Okay.
It's been a long time, and I had to wait in line at Binny's before we went on lockdown. I actually got out of my car, and there was a line of about 25 deep because we were going on lockdown a few hours later, and I saw some Courvoisier, and I was like, man, I haven't had Courvoisier since I was like 23. Let's get some Courvoisier. So, the ladies' man impression like you did a few weeks ago.
Well, it's a terrible impression. If you want to try and do better, please. I set a pretty low bar.
You
All
did.
right.
We got to move on from this segment.
All right, anyway.
It's really bad.
So, we're talking about the impact of the coronavirus around international leagues and things of that nature. And Mike, you actually got to stay up and watch like the only soccer that is still left, and that was from the Australian A-League. So the Australian A-League, it's interesting how their league is set up because it's similar to the United States in that their teams are really spread out all over this giant continent. For whatever you guys know about Australia, like 90% of their population lives within, like 100 miles of the coast or something like that. Like there's nothing in Central Australia but desert. So you've got teams having to crisscross this country, crisscross this continent, just to get to their games. Right now, they only have 11 teams in the A-League. And I think 1 or 2 are set to join within the next year or two as new expansion teams. I don't know if they're expanding into New Zealand, if they're getting any clubs there. But that's where the A-League is right now. They have not been around too long. I think in their current format, I'm just kind of scrolling through here. Yes, 2005. The 05-06 season was the first season for the A-League. So, hey, they're celebrating their 15th-year anniversary. The current champions are Sydney, and the current premier is Perth. It's interesting that just how the MLS has their Supporter Shield winner and their regular season winner, they've also got the MLS Cup. Similarly, in the A-League, you have your champion who wins the playoff, and then you have your premier who wins the regular season. So you see the most championships and premiers, the Melbourne Victory and Sydney FC each have 4 championships and 3 premiers. So you've got, a really top-heavy kind of league if you want to think of it in that aspect. So that's your brief history of the A-League. Mike, it's only 15 years old. Do the style of play reflect the youth of the league?
Absolutely. It was really rough to watch. So let me preface this. I'm going to take this story all the way back to the start of the day on Friday. So I'm like, hey, lives. We're enjoying these lives on the YouTube channel. We're getting lots of viewers, lots of subscribers. So I'm going to do as many games as I can. So we did some Mexican games from Liga MX before they shut down. Had a huge response. I mean, we had 3.5 thousand views on the Club America Cruz Azul game. We picked up over 30 subscribers in that game alone. So I'm like, all right, A-League, they're still playing. I'm doing it. Oh, wait, it's at 1:30 in the morning and then 3:30 in the morning. All right, maybe I'll take a nap. I've worked third shift before, people. I know how it's done. I can do it again. I'm a little bit older now, but I can do it. So I end up, I look at ESPN Plus, and they have the one game Central Coast Mariners against Melbourne City FC, who's actually Melbourne City. A quick MLS note on those guys. They are in the same ownership group as Manchester City and New York City. So City Football Group.
City Football Group, yep.
Right. So David Villa, before he went over to New York City when he signed from wherever the hell he signed from, he actually went on loan to Melbourne City in the A-League. So that's the MLS connection there. But
all right.
I end up, I'm like, all right,
that wasn't too far of a stretch. That was pretty good.
It was good. It was good. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do this game. Now, I'm looking online, and the former coach of the Vancouver Whitecaps, here's another MLS connection for you, Carl Robinson, who happens to be I don't know if I would go as far as a personal friend, but I've hung out with the man and did a lot of shots with the guy at a Hard Rock casino in Hollywood, Florida, back in 2007 when he played for TFC, but we won't go any further than that. So he is the head coach of Newcastle United Jets in the A-League after leaving Vancouver. So I look at the schedule and I see that Newcastle is playing at 3:30 Central Standard Time, but the game's not listed on ESPN Plus. So I'm looking into it, and it turns out it was actually rescheduled. The game was rescheduled from week 27, when they're in week 24 in the A-League. So I'm like, all right, that's why ESPN doesn't have it, because it got rescheduled, because one of the teams who plays in New Zealand, Wellington Phoenix, they had to travel from country to country, and so they had to be quarantined for 14 days. Well, so did the other team who played them that previous week. And those two teams.
Sorry to cut you off, Mike, but that's interesting because we see quarantines between New Zealand and Australia, such close neighbors. Like if you've got in the United States, you've got to remember that you've got Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver who are in another country than the most of Major League Soccer. Like we could start to see that even if we picked up MLS play again, and these different countries have different quarantine procedures for international flights and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Especially if some of our DPs and international signings are heading back home and then coming back to play. Like these are definite things that need to be taken into consideration about how they want to quarantine players and teams. And, you know, the United States has closed down its borders to travel. So we're learning a lesson from the A-League, that's for sure. So wanted to put another little MLS twist in there as well. And, something to think about when they decide to open up the game. The game's here stateside.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, back to this story. So, I'm looking at the schedule. It's not on ESPN Plus for the Newcastle Jets and Brisbane Roar, which was rescheduled from week 27 to week 24. So I'm like, you know what? ESPN Plus isn't paying attention. I'm going to get on the phone and call them, their technical support, and tell them that there's a game on that they don't have listed on their site. So I call in, and this lady's like, no, sir, I'm in Canada, and there are no games anywhere. There is no soccer because of coronavirus. And I'm like, no, ma'am, you don't understand. I'm telling you, there is a game, and it's not on your schedule. She's like, for tomorrow? And I'm like, yes, for tomorrow. She looks it up. She's like, no, well, there is a game tomorrow. You are correct, sir. It's Central Coast Mariners against Melbourne City. I'm like, no, you're wrong. The game is being rescheduled from week 27. She's like, well, what do you want me to do about that, sir? I'm like, email programming and tell them there's another game on so it doesn't affect your contract, because you guys are showing every A-League game. That's their thing, right? They've got Serie A, they've got MLS, they've got A-League. Those are the three professional soccer leagues that they have. So I'm like, I'm doing ESPN a favor as well as the A-League a favor. I'm like, come on, guys, get this. So I'm on the phone literally for 30 minutes, Nick. I shit you not, 30 minutes. I'm on the phone with these guys.
There you go, back making defecation references again. Way to go. That's 3 times this episode.
It's the Courvoisier. What can I say?
All
right. You know what? It's Corona time. Okay?
You're self-medicating. That's fine. Self-quarantine, self-medicate. Exactly. Got it.
So I'm on the phone with these people for 30 minutes. And finally, I get off the phone, and about an hour later, I look up the schedule on ESPN Plus. I pull up the ESPN Plus app on my PlayStation, go to the A-League. Boom! There's the game. Brisbane Roar against Newcastle Jets. That was all because of Mike Guillaume's Sons of a Pitch Soccer podcast. So
there you go. You can effectuate change, people.
Absolutely. So to the lady who I spoke to, who is in Canada, with the accent, I don't remember your name. If you are listening, because I told you all about Sons of a Pitch, an American Soccer podcast, as I was telling you why your company was not doing its job correctly, and that some radio crazy podcast host was telling you how to do your job. If you're listening right now, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. I had a great conversation with you, and I hope it got you a raise because you alerted programming to not let them fall out of their contract. So anyways, this game comes on now. The reason why this is important, folks, is because I set up the live stream. So when I'm putting these lives on Facebook or on YouTube, a lot of work goes into it, right? I'm putting graphics together on OBS. I'm putting screenshots together for YouTube thumbnails to put out on Twitter to promote the stream. And I'm putting all this stuff together, and I'm like, all right, I have got to get both of these games done, even though I don't know if the other game's going to be on. So the day before, I'm putting all this stuff together. And I can't even remember where I was going with this.
all the work you put into it, Mike. All the work to see Melbourne City's victory and the Brisbane Roar's victory in the wee hours of the morning. Here.
Yes. So I put all this stuff together, and nobody ends up watching it. And there ends up being an ESPN Plus issue with the stream for the first game, Central Coast Mariners against Melbourne City. The entire game, ESPN had up, we're having technical difficulties. We're going to fix this ASAP. And there wasn't. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So finally, I'm tired. I'm ready to go to bed. And I'm telling people on the YouTube stream, if they've got technical difficulties for the Brisbane Roar Newcastle United game, I'm going to sleep. I'm not staying through this game. And lo and behold, magically, the game was shown on the 3:30 game. Was there? It was actually soccer, but I could not make it. I was so drunk that I had to go to sleep. It was 4:00 in the morning. I had been drinking for 8+ hours. I could not handle it, and I had to go to sleep. So for the 6 people that were watching that stream, thank you for watching. I'm sorry I couldn't finish the game out. We will not be doing any more A-League games because I'm not going to put in 8 hours of work and stay up to the middle of the night for 8 viewers. I'm sorry. I draw a line somewhere.
Well, let's get to some analysis then, Mike. I know you and I were talking about how the A-League stacks up to MLS, and I think the comparison we came up with was it's like NCAA soccer right now. That's where the A-League is.
Yeah, it truly is. It's bad. It's really bad. I mean, these guys, the one goal for Brisbane Roar over Newcastle, it was ugly. I mean, it was a complete turnover, a pass to a bad place. The goalie could have saved the shot, and it was just a complete howler by the goalkeeper. It's ugly soccer. It's bad. When you're comparing it to MLS. If you're comparing it to NCAA soccer, the few NCAA games that I've watched, which is not a ton. I mean, I've watched some FGCU games, some of the Big Ten games that are, somewhat interesting, but it's just not good soccer. Maybe 2 of those guys might actually make it in MLS. Maybe one of those other guys makes it in USL. The rest of them are never going to play sports again in their life. And, that's kind of where the A-League is right now. So from an MLS perspective, it's nice to see because we are constantly considered one of the lower leagues in the world. And, it's MLS. It's a retirement home for players to go and die and all this kind of stuff.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But the play is much better in MLS compared to another league around the world who's getting full-time coverage on ESPN+. So that's nice to see from that standpoint.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good comp, and I will say the A-League is getting better. It's sponsored by Hyundai, so they've got money coming in. You've got a group like City Football Group who's got a team there. They are expanding, so you got to imagine they're getting better. I mean, think where the MLS was in 2006. That's where the A-League is right now.
Right.
So they've still got a long way to go, but hopefully they're going in the right direction. I know the Aussies love their sports. I've got a lot of family in Australia, especially in the Sydney area. And when I graduated college, that's where my family went for a little kind of college grad family vacation. Let's go visit our family we haven't seen in 20-some years. And so my cousins found out I played soccer. They called up a couple of their buddies. Like, we played a pickup game in their backyard, and we were just kicking it around. And my cousin looks at me. He's like, I didn't know you were this good. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am not that good. I played JV in high school. I played for some clubs in Northwest Indiana. I played for Northwest Indiana United. I played for Rock Run Express. Fairly good clubs in their own right, but no PDL. Like, I wasn't getting scouted. I scrimmaged with Illinois' club team when I was in college. I practiced with the Valparaiso club team and their I practiced with the Valpo club team when I was in law school, but by no means was I like a D1 athlete or anything like that. So we're playing these pickup games with some of these Aussies right after I graduated college, and my cousin's like, "Hey, my buddy's the backup goalkeeper for Sydney FC. Do you want to see if he can get you a workout?" And I'm like, "What?" I'm like 5'6", 135 at the time. I'm a lean 135 at the time. I'll give you that. But he's like, "Hey, maybe you could get a tryout with Sydney FC." And I was like, "Okay, the A-League has a long, long way to go." That was kind of my takeaway from that. Then again, at that time they were only in their second season. So maybe they were just searching for talent, and who knows? You get the Greek American, you make some connections, you sell some jerseys, and I ride the bench for a year and call it a day. But that's where they were in their second season in, is that the local rumor was like, hey, maybe you can get a tryout.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, because that's kind of like for me in college, man. Like when I was in college at FGCU with the whole Sweet 16 run back in 2013. I graduated from FGCU in 2006, and at the time, they were trying to get me to play for the baseball team, and I am not a good baseball player. I'm fat. I'm slow. And they were trying to get me to play without giving me a scholarship.
Catcher, Mike. That's what we're saying here, right?
Right. I mean, pretty much. I mean, they needed. They were like, hey, you should try out for the team. You should play. You're going to play. You might be able to get a scholarship one day. I'm like, yeah. Well, unfortunately, I got to work 40 hours on the weekend to pay for my school. So unless you're giving me a scholarship, go to hell. But I was in. There was a chance I could have played for that. I mean, I could have played for that team. I know I could have. And the fact that, like you with the A-League, it's come a long way. So has FGCU baseball. And still the A-League sucks as it is right now. But it will get better, just like MLS got better. That's my point on that one.
I think that's a good point to make there, Mike. So with that, we're kind of wrapping up our show here. We got a few minutes. Do you want to share, as we got some time, as there's not much in the way of headlines, do you want to share some of our MLS memories then? Is this kind of a good segue into it, or should we hold it over for next week maybe?
What do you think, let's give Mike? The people what they want. If they're still listening right now, let's go through our number one memory of MLS play, and then you know what? Maybe we'll save number 2 for next week.
All right, that sounds good. So I'll start. Then you can finish the show and take it home then, Mike. But my number one MLS memory was the 2006 All-Star Game here in Bridgeview, Toyota Stadium, Toyota Park. I forget they renamed it now, and I can't even remember what it was.
SeatGeek.
I know now it's SeatGeek, but it was Toyota Park. Anyway, I actually had won a radio contest. It's like, hey, you won. You get to come train with the Chicago Fire. I'm like, hell yeah. So I show up, and it's like their academy development team, and it's a bunch of 18, 20-year-old guys from Ireland. And it wasn't even like a real training session. It was like, we're going to help you learn drills to coach the next generation of American soccer. I'm like, oh, okay, so I don't get to meet anyone. Like, the coolest thing about it was I got some swag, and I got 2 tickets to the All-Star Game. Actually, they were only going to give me 1 ticket because so few people actually showed up after winning this radio contest. They gave me 2 tickets. So this girl I'm dating at the time, we end up going to the 2006 All-Star Game. It's the MLS All-Stars versus Chelsea. And we had Chelsea stars like Michael Ballack and Didier Drogba. Like, I got to watch those guys play. The MLS All-Stars beat them 1-0. 70th minute goal, I think, by Dwayne De Rosario. And D-Ro. He was playing for Houston at the time. I think that was right. I think it was when they were winning their cups, too. It was right after they made the move from San Jose. And we got lucky enough where the De Rosario family was sitting in the 2 rows behind me. So he scores that header. They go nuts, and I'm jumping up and screaming, high-fiving like his aunt and his cousin and everything. Like, we're going nuts in the stands with the De Rosario family. So that is probably that is my best MLS memory, because it's here in Chicago. It's the All-Star Game. You got the Chelsea stars. I'm high-fiving De Rosario's family. Like, it was just a great moment. A great moment for me and my MLS fandom.
Hey, there you go. Now, D-Ro, I've got a completely separate memory, so put this one in the notes for D-Ro scoring a goal against Haiti in the 2009 Gold Cup. We'll touch on this one next week if we've got the time. But my number one memory is the 2016 MLS Cup final between Toronto FC and Seattle Sounders. So I actually risked my marriage to go to this game. My wife was not having it whatsoever, and I said to hell with it. I rented a car and I drove to Toronto and went to the 2016 MLS Cup final, which Notoriously, Seattle won their first MLS Cup at that time by defeating Toronto FC in penalty kicks, where Toronto completely dominated this game. I was double fisting up in section 216, just being like, this is it. We're going to get it done. We're going to win. And just completely dominated the game. Javinko with chances. I mean, it was fantastic. I cannot believe still to this day that Seattle won that game. And you know what? It turns out that Bruce Arena was actually in the stands, in the suites right below my section. So every time I would go down to buy 2 beers, because I am that asshole, I ended up running into Bruce Arena outside the suite box. And, I couldn't believe how short the man was. That was what really got my attention. I'm like, holy shit, that's Bruce Arena. And then he was like 5'4". And I'm like, wow, you're short. But MLS Cup 2016 was wonderful, other than the save and the fact that TFC lost. And then I drove home through a 10-inch of snowstorm the next day in order to get back. It was not pretty. My wife didn't talk to me for like a week after that, but it was worth it, even though we lost. It was a great experience to watch MLS Cup 2016. So that's my number one memory of MLS. Very personal one at that. And with that, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about our second, third, and fourth memories next week, if there's nothing else to talk about in the world of soccer, because we are sitting here through coronavirus and the hiatus of play. So thank you, everybody, for listening to us yak for almost an hour about soccer and absolutely no soccer content whatsoever as far as live games go. And again, thank you very much to our sponsors, Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water. Thank you very much for continuing to support us even in this tough time. We definitely appreciate it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys soon. Look out. We might want to try a little stadium idea here on YouTube. So check out our YouTube channel, and maybe we'll put out some stadium rankings coming up very soon. Thanks, and we'll talk to you guys soon.